Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. For those of you who are brand new here, my name is Alicia. I'm a 38-year-old single mom of 3 awesome teenagers, and I'm here to talk about all things cruising. For those who haven't heard any of my story yet, like I said, I have 3 awesome teenagers. My oldest is a freshman in college. The other 2 are not too far behind. And I have been starting to work on thinking about what my next stage in life is going to look like, especially once the nest is emptied out. And the main thing that I want to do is live at the ocean. I love the ocean. I love being out at sea. I love the ocean breezes and the nature and wildlife. And so my goal is to be living at least most of the year on cruise ships. So right now, since I've got kids still at home, I'm going to be a part-time cruiser. And obviously that is going to shift over the next about 3.5 to 4 years. But I wanted to give some insight on vacationing as a solo person, or if you're wanting to make this kind of transition as well, we can follow along together. So my last video, I had mentioned that I was going to be talking about shore excursions. So shore excursions are something that can either make a cruise absolutely unforgettable, or it can make it incredibly stressful. So, and it's usually stressful due to lack of planning, especially when you're going solo. So if you're cruising alone, the stakes, they feel a little bit different. You don't always have someone who's going to be watching your bag for you while you're taking photos. You don't have someone to walk back to the ship with. And you certainly don't want to feel stuck in a situation where you're not feeling safe or comfortable. So today I'm going to talk about my personal approach to choosing shore excursions, comparing the cruise line tours versus third-party vendors, or even just having a DIY day, which I'll explain what that is here in a minute. We'll go more into how do I evaluate safety, what I look for in reviews when planning out my days, and why every solo cruiser needs to have a backup plan. And I didn't realize that this was important until I got to talking with other people, and now that is a must-have. So by the end of this video, you're going to know how to choose a shore excursion that matches your comfort level, your energy level, your travel style, and hopefully even your budget, not anyone else's. So we'll get into it. So obviously, I am not on a ship. I wish I was. I'm hoping to here within the next few months. And today we finally have a beautiful day outside. We've had a lot of rain lately. And then I went outside and it was too bright. I was going to actually do this video outside so y'all could enjoy it with me and envision being on a ship, but that was not in the plans today, apparently. So you get to enjoy it from my living room. So I've got some notes here, so if I look like I'm looking off to the side, I swear I want to look at you guys. So my personal approach to excursions. Most of the time when I have a cruise booked, I will usually plan at least one shore excursion if that was already planned in the budget and things like that. I'll usually have one planned out before I ever get on the ship, partially because of pricing, or it's an activity that I know is going to be in really high demand. But I will usually think about it while I'm on the ship, and here's why. I like to think the day of, or even maybe the night before, do I want to have structure or do I want to have freedom? how comfortable am I with this particular port, and then what would make me feel relaxed instead of being stressed. So those three questions are super, super important. Some of the ports, they feel very easy. They're walkable, they're safe, there's lots of transportation options. Others can be extremely overwhelming, especially if there's a language barrier, if there's long distances to really get anywhere into, shopping or other activities, or maybe it just has more of a chaotic vibe. I've had a few stops that have definitely stressed me out more than relaxed me, but I've also had some that just melt any stress away. So you really have to feel it out. So here's the key. I don't try to prove anything. So traveling solo is not about being fearless, it's about being intentional. Some days I'll book cruise line excursions and I'll happily pay extra just for the peace of mind. Other days I'd rather explore independently just because I want the flexibility. And occasionally I'll plan a DIY adventure. There is no correct way or a right way. The only way that makes you feel secure and excited, that is the right way. So let's compare the three main options. So you've got the cruise line tours. So if you're going to be on a major cruise line, Carnival, Royal Caribbean, Norwegian, they all have a full catalog of excursions that are offered directly through the cruise company. And you can usually access them pretty well on your cruise planner through their website, or you can even call into the cruise line and get those booked. Now, the biggest pro going through the cruise line, in my opinion, is that the ship will wait for you if you are delayed. Get this. If you are on a Carnival, Royal Caribbean, whatever, an excursion that you purchased through them, through one of their vetted vendors, if the bus breaks down, there's some kind of a delay time-wise, the ship is not going to leave you. So that is the biggest plus, especially being solo, being in a foreign country. That can be terrifying to even think about. Now, like I said, it's very easy to book. There's very clear refunding policies in place. The vendors are vetted. And typically there's larger groups, which can just make you feel safer. Now, some of the cons. Probably the biggest con, and one of the main reasons that I hear that people prefer not to go through the cruise line, is that it's more expensive. And of course, it varies on the increase in price, but for me, the peace of mind is usually worth it. Another con is that it is a larger group size. Sometimes they're too large. There's less flexibility. You have to show up when they tell you to show up, otherwise you are going to miss it, and therefore you're out of the money. You can also feel kind of rushed or even like herded like cattle. But when I choose the cruise line tours, it's typically when the port is far away from the city. You see that occasionally in Europe. Not so much in the Caribbean, but I won't say that that's not possible. Usually I will go through cruise line if it's my first time in that country or at that port. If transportation logistics just seem a little bit more complicated and might not be something that I have the time, the energy, or the ambition to deal with at that particular moment. If the port has safety concerns. Or if I just want a low stress day, but I want some excitement. So for solo women especially, and I'm going to reiterate this, the ship will wait guarantee can be absolutely priceless. I've seen a lot of people who are, running down the pier. They'll call them pier runners. and because they are about to miss their ship, or they do miss their ship because they were not there when they needed to be there. So having that reassurance and that guarantee is invaluable. So then we have the third-party vendors. Third-party vendors are independent tour companies that are not affiliated with the cruise line in any way, shape, or form. There are different platforms online, Viator, Shore Excursions Group, or Get Your Guide. Those are three of the main ones. Of course, there's a bunch more out there. Some of the benefits to that is it is often less expensive than going through the cruise line, which is great. Usually they're smaller groups. There's more unique experiences, but also the itineraries tend to be a little bit more flexible. Now, like I said, that ship will not wait if there is any kind of a delay for any reason. It doesn't matter if there's a medical emergency, a vehicle broke down, the ship just won't wait. Quality can vary. So that's where checking out the reviews are so important. You need to keep in mind that the refund policies will differ between each company. And then, like I said, it just requires more research. You want to make sure that you're in a position that you're going to be safe, especially going solo. So I will usually choose third-party tours if the port is super easy and it's close. If I'm wanting that smaller group vibe, if the activity is short, because I want to make sure I've got plenty of time to get back to the cruise ship if something were to happen. And like I said, I want to have a buffer. So if a ship is planning to leave around 5 o'clock, then I want to be on the ship no later than 3:30. That is just peace of mind for me, that I know I am there with plenty of time, and I don't want to take any chances of getting left behind without my luggage, potentially with language barriers. That's just not a safe situation for me. So then we have DIY days, and sometimes these are the best. Not knocking shore excursions with whether it's through the cruise line or through a third-party vendor, but I love DIY days. And this just means that you get to explore 100% on your own. You get to walk around the port city, you could take public transportation, you could even hire a taxi for the entire day and let them show you around. You could go to a beach club, or even like visit museums independently instead of going in a group setting. So when I choose to do that, I'm doing that because I want total freedom. I want to have the opportunity to move at my own pace. It is usually the cheapest option. And then I get to leave whenever I'm ready to leave. If it's getting close to that hour and a half mark before the ship leaves, I can say, okay, I'm done. I'm going to go back to the ship now. Or, I'm hungry, so I want to go and get lunch, and then I'll go back to the museum, or whatever the case may be. Now, when doing these DIY days, those pros are amazing pros. The cons, they can be meh. The logistics are all on you. So you have to know exactly where to go, how to get there, what the cost is, what, how long you're going to be there. That's all on you. There is a higher risk if transportation fails. You do have to have the confidence to navigate alone. And that can be very intimidating for a lot of people, especially who are brand new at going solo. And then there's no built-in group safety, because typically you're by yourself. Or if you're traveling with a friend or two, you've got a very, very small knit group. So I like to go DIY when I know that the port is very walkable. If I know that the port is known for being safe. I've researched transportation thoroughly. I'm comfortable with the language basics, at least. And I've also downloaded some offline maps. DIY can be very empowering, but only when it's done thoughtfully and intentionally. So I'm gonna kind of do a quick review on the pros and cons. Um, the the breakdown, how I see it, is if you're gonna go through the cruise line, that's gonna be your safest bet. But it is the least flexible. It's going to be the most expensive, but it is also the lowest stress. Third parties, it's kind of middle of the road across the board. It can be stressful. Sorry, my dog decided he wants to go crazy right now. So third party is kind of middle of the line. But then DIY, it's definitely the most flexible. It's definitely the most cost effective. But when it comes to stress and safety, it depends. It depends on where you're at. It depends on what you're planning on doing. There are a lot of what if scenarios that could come into play. So, as a solo woman, safety and stress management matters more than an addition, than $40. So, I will typically go through the cruise line strictly for safety and stress management. So, we just talked about safety. Let's go a little bit deeper into that. This is where women in particular, but anyone who's traveling solo, needs to be thorough. I always do reviews, and I will review the cruise line site. If I'm going to do a cruise line or do an excursion through them, I will read the reviews on Google, on Viator, on some of the travel forums. The travel forums, honestly, I think are the most, or even on Google, they tend to be the most honest, because I truly see the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then I can make a really a better decision based on getting that information. So when I'm reading those reviews, I'm taking a look at the solo, mentioning that people were traveling solo, comments about professionalism, phrases like I felt safe, or I felt secure, or I felt at ease, things like that that really make me a little more comfortable before I even book it. And then on time return experiences. If they are known for being an hour or two late each time, chances are I'm not going to be doing it. Red flags. I look for, do they seem to be a disorganized function? Do they tend to have poor communication? Are there complaints about aggressive selling? I'm not on vacation or when I go into living on cruise ships, I'm not there to buy every little trinket out there. So that's something that can be very obnoxious over time. So if I see repeated issues, typically I'll say, nope, I'm not doing it. So then I also look at how long has the company been in business. Typically, I like to find companies who have been operating for at least 5 years. It shows that they have some security in that location. That longevity typically will suggest that they've established safety procedures, that there's reliable transportation, the operations are more consistent. Brand new companies aren't automatically bad, but I definitely research more in detail. So then, refund policies. There are lots of reasons why you may end up needing a refund, and it's not just because you canceled your cruise, which I hope you don't, because that's sad. But right now, a lot of people have heard that there is a lot of tension in certain parts of Mexico. And because of that, there are cruise lines who are changing itineraries. So obviously that can affect shore excursions. For example, this morning it was released by Carnival Cruise Lines that the Carnival Panorama will not be going to Puerto Vallarta for the next few weeks. They'll kind of reevaluate the safety situation in that city in the coming weeks and determine, is it safe to return with 3, 4, 5,000 passengers. But of course there's a lot of people who already had booked excursions for Puerto Vallarta. So if you're going through the cruise line, it is super simple to get a refund. If the cruise hasn't set sail yet, you'll get a refund. If they have set sail, they usually put it on as onboard credit. That way you can utilize it in another fashion, either at a different port or somehow, utilizing it however you wish on the ship. But if you're going through a third party, then you may not necessarily have that automatic process. And I will say 99% of the time you won't have that automatic process. So you need to be able to contact them, and so you need to know what their refund policies look like. Do they have 24-hour cancellation? Do they have refund options if the weather is less than ideal? What if the cruise is delayed or canceled? And is there a minimum participation requirement? So as a solo traveler, I don't want my tour canceled because not enough people booked it. A lot of times they may say, oh, we need it to have at least 10 people to make it worthwhile for us to do this excursion. And only 8 people book, they're going to cancel it. I want to know what the process is ahead of time, so that way I can make a conscientious decision. Do I want to book this specific excursion with this particular company? So then we also have to look at group sizes. There can be very large groups. They can have very small groups. Those large groups, they tend to feel a little bit safer, but it is less personal. And then you have the really small groups that are more intimate, but you definitely have to be careful. If it's going to be just me and one guide, I'm not doing it. I want to make sure that, numbers talk. Typically, I like between 6 and 15 people, depending on the type of excursion that we're doing. Now, before booking, I will sometimes send a message. And this is typically with the third parties. If they're responding quickly and clearly, it's definitely a green flag for me. If their communication is really vague or they're being pushy, no thank you. I'm good. Professionalism in an email equals professionalism in person. So I am really conscientious of how they address me. I don't expect perfect English, especially if we're talking about a country where English is not a primary language, but I do want them to have the professionalism. So I mentioned earlier about a backup plan, and this is probably one of the most underrated solo travel strategies. Every solo traveler needs to have a plan B. Why? Tours can cancel, weather can change, you might decide that you are just too tired, you've overexerted yourself, or you might decide that you're not feeling comfortable once you arrive at the location for your excursion. So for my backup system, every port I have my primary plan. I have a simple low stress backup, which is usually going to the beach that's right near the port. I can get back to the port in 15-20 minutes after I've dried off. I always have transportation information saved. I'll have an offline Google Maps downloaded, and I always have the emergency contact number saved. Most cruise lines will provide that to you for the local port authority, the consulate or embassy that's nearest, but also the emergency number for the cruise line. So if something feels off, I pivot, but I now have the information to be able to do so. Confidence always comes with options. So backup plans matter more for solo women. Now, this doesn't mean that they aren't good across the board, but keep in mind this is primarily for people who are traveling solo. So when you're alone, you're not able to split up tasks. You don't have someone spotting risks that you might miss. You may be more noticeable because you're going by yourself. So a backup plan removes panic from unexpected situations. And panic is what makes us more vulnerable. So prepared women just tend to move a little bit differently. So planning short excursions as a solo woman isn't about being scared. It's about being more strategic. You don't need to know about the most adventurous option. You don't need to prove that you're fearless. You don't need to book the cheapest thing. Your excursion needs to match your comfort level. So some days that might mean a cruise line bus tour, or a small group snorkeling trip, or even just a peaceful day at the beach by yourself in the afternoon. Or heck, sometimes one of the best options is just staying on board the ship and enjoying a quiet spa day. So this goal isn't to impress anyone. The goal is to feel safe, confident, and genuinely excited about your day. Because when you're feeling secure, you enjoy more, you're going to notice more, you're going to relax more, and that's when traveling truly becomes transformative. So if you found this helpful, share it with another solo traveler. And if you've cruised solo before, tell me in the comments, what's your favorite excursion style? I would love to know. Maybe tell me which cruise ship has the best variety or had the best excursion that you enjoyed. So I will see you in the next video. I hope you have wonderful and safe travels, and I will see you soon. Take care, everyone.